Mistakes happen, even for Pokemon. For a series spanning over 25 years across over 30 core series games, a few things slip through the cracks, and today we'll be looking at some mistakes across every main series Pokemon game. Now if you're watching this video on a browser, you could be making a mistake yourself by not watching it on Opera GX, who are the sponsors for today's video. I've been using Opera GX for a while now, since default browsers tend to be bloated resource hogs. Opera GX has GX mods too, which can be used to customize your experience. They can be accessed by clicking this icon on the sidebar, then going to the store. I tried out this Cozy mod, which gives Opera GX a nice pink theme, and has calming sounds when you open a new tab, close a new tab, or type. You can go into the mod settings over here to enable or disable whichever features you want. Now I know you might be thinking that switching to a new browser is a pain, but Opera GX is equipped with an easy to use import tool that allows you to import your browser history, your bookmarks, and your cookies. All you need to do to import is click the gear icon in the browser settings, scroll down to synchronization, click import bookmarks and settings, then select whichever options you want to import from your old browser. Ditch your old browser and use my link in the description to download Opera GX today. Thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. First, we have Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. One would argue that the entire game's existence are a mistake because, well, have you ever played Red and Blue? But aside from the more well-known glitches and grammatical mistakes, my favorite mistake has to be the glitch that lets you bypass stone evolutions. Let's say you want to evolve your Staryu into Starmie and for whatever reason don't have access to a Water Stone. All you need to do to evolve it is get an Onix, then get into a battle leading with your Staryu that is close to leveling up. Switch into Onix, knock out a Pokemon to give Staryu enough EXP to level up, and Staryu will then evolve into Starmie. This happens because of an oversight with how data is stored, with Onix sharing some sort of value with the Water Stone that tricks the game into thinking that Staryu should evolve upon leveling up. This method works with any Pokemon that evolves with a Water Stone in Red and Blue, however you can also use it to bypass other stone evolutions with different Pokemon, as you can see on your screen here. And yeah, for one of them you need Missing No, which is pretty funny. This stone bypassing error was fixed in Pokemon Yellow version along with many other glitches from Red and Blue, but Yellow version still has its fair share of mistakes. Like if you go to the Celadon City department store and talk to this one person on the 4th floor, he'll say that he's getting a Pokédoll to give to the copycat in Cerulean City. The copycat doesn't live in Cerulean City though, as they live in Saffron City. Also in Pokemon Yellow, your starter Pikachu famously follows you around because it doesn't like being in its Pokeball. Because of this, when you send it out in battle and it's first in your party, it just runs across the screen as opposed to coming out of a Pokeball like any other Pokemon would. The issue with this is when you first get Pikachu and battle your rival, Pikachu is still in the Pokeball and doesn't yet break out of its Pokeball and follow you around, but that same animation for Pikachu running out into battle plays at the start of battle when it should be sent out of a Pokeball here. At least that mistake doesn't persist in Pokemon Gold and Silver, since Pokemon don't follow you around in those games, which is one positive to Pokemon not following you, I guess. They did, however, make a mistake with the moves Lock On and Mind Reader, which are similar moves that are intended to make the user's next attack hit the target Pokemon no matter what. Due to a programming oversight with how these moves work, if a target Pokemon is affected by Lock On or Mind Reader, then the other Pokemon goes for a move like Attract, Curse, Foresight, Transform, and a couple of other non-damaging moves, while the target Pokemon is in the first turn of Fly or Dig. The move coming from the Pokemon with Lock On or Mind Reader will not hit. Similarly, additional move effects like Bubble's chance to lower speed won't activate either, even if the move hits. It just has a 0% chance to activate in those situations. Now Pokemon Gold and Silver, and by association Crystal, are notorious for having weird level gaps between gyms and other key trainers, and a region layout that can easily have you battle people out of order. You can even battle your rival out of order in one instance, where he is at 2 places at once. In Crystal, when you enter the Burn Tower for the first time, your rival doesn't immediately challenge you to a battle like they do in Gold and Silver, so you can hold off on battling him and go into Olivine City, where you will then see your rival walking out of Jasmine's gym and then talk to you. Then if you go back to the Burn Tower, your rival will still be there waiting for you to battle them, even though he should be gone by now. Surprisingly, for early released Pokemon games, the Generation 2 games as a whole don't really have that many glaring mistakes when it comes to grammar or typos, especially compared to the Generation 1 games. But then in Generation 3, we got some more spelling or grammar mistakes with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. The most famous example comes from Mawwile's Pokedex entry, which has an H after the W in its name, which it isn't supposed to have. This was fixed in later releases of Ruby and Sapphire, but since it wasn't easy to patch games that didn't have online connectivity in the early 2000s, if you have a copy of Ruby and Sapphire that might have been right when the game's released in 2003, you should check to see if yours has the correct or incorrect Mawwile Pokedex entry. This one is also really subtle, but on Route 134, there is a tile of flowing water that you can walk on, and if you do it, it pushes you back to land, much like it would do if you were just surfing on it. Let's take a break from the Hoenn region for now and revisit Kanto with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green version. There's a minor spelling mistake with the TJTV where the Pokedude will say Key Items Pocket, but the word pocket will have the K and the C switched around. Another funny error happens in these games when it comes to the listings of the Pokemon's categories in the Pokedex. If they have a category that's supposed to be 2 words, like how Pidgey is the tiny bird Pokemon, it would only display the first word, making Pidgey just the tiny Pokemon. Now back to Hoenn with Pokemon Emerald. Surprisingly, this and a few other glitches exist in Pokemon Emerald version that were not in Fire Red and Leaf Green or Ruby and Sapphire. Maybe in the future we can take a more in-depth look at Pokemon Emerald glitches, since surprisingly there's a lot of glitches exclusive to Emerald. But there is also a mistake with some of Steven's dialogue when he tried to battle him in the Meteor Falls in the post-game. He remembers the time you helped him in the Sootopolis City Space Center, although the Space Center isn't in Sootopolis City, it's in Mossdeep City. Now the idea of space in the Pokemon world is expanded upon further in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the first core series games on the Nintendo DS, which also have their fair share of mistakes, although some of these mistakes exist outside of the actual games themselves. Like in the North American manual for Pearl version, it says that you have to trade Pokemon to complete the Pokedex, although it says you have to trade with Pearl version to complete the Pokedex, which wouldn't work since Pearl version doesn't have the Diamond version exclusives and it's supposed to say trade with Diamond version. Then on the back cover of the Australian version for Diamond version, it says the Pokemon that ruins space in Diamond version, when Dialga, the Diamond version exclusive, is the Pokemon that ruins time, and Palkia, the Pearl version exclusive, ruins space. As for the actual games themselves, if you were to transfer a Pokemon from Fire Red or Leaf Green into Diamond and Pearl, there will be a small typo where it would put a space between the Fire and Red and then another space between the Leaf and the Green, when they are supposed to be one word without the space between it. This was later fixed in Platinum version, released about 2 years after Diamond and Pearl. In Platinum version though, they did mess up Black Belt Eddie's dialogue in the Victory Road. After defeating him, he is supposed to say "done in," but if you battle him in a double battle with the other nearby trainer, the text will just be all jumbled with the letters all over the place. For Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they allowed any Pokemon to follow you as opposed to just Pikachu like we saw back in Yellow version, as long as they weren't too big for the area and were first in your party. Because of this, if you enter the Cianwood City Gym with a Pokemon that is too big to follow you around and it stays inside of its Pokeball, then stand behind this waterfall here and switch your lead Pokemon to something that can follow you, the Pokemon will appear in a different part of the gym that it isn't supposed to be in. Moving on to Gen 5 with Pokemon Black and White, in the Chargestone Cave, if a dust cloud appears next to one of the blue rocks you can push and you interact with the rock, the dust cloud sprite will move on top of the player instead of being underneath the player like it's supposed to be. There's also a few instances where if you're surfing and find an NPC standing right next to the edge of the water, you can sometimes glitch onto the NPC when you go onto land and stand in the same tile that they're standing on. For their sequels, Pokemon Black 2 and Pokemon White 2, there is a minor grammatical error in the gate between Nimbasa City and Route 16 where an NPC will say, 2 years ago, a Pokemon called Zoroark was hiding in its lair in the Lost Lorn Forest on Route 16, where the word "its" has an apostrophe between the T and the S when it shouldn't, as when you put an apostrophe in the word it's supposed to mean it is, which doesn't make sense for this sentence. In Pokemon X and Y, if you walk past any sign, your player's head will turn to look at the sign even if you are walking parallel to the sign, which allows you to interact and read the signs without directly facing them. Kind of a minor but nice quality of life feature in Pokemon X and Y. For some reason though, this just doesn't work with the sign in front of the daycare center on Route 7, and you can only read it if you're directly facing it. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire also have a strange mistake, but this time with the promotional material used when advertising the game. They release an image of Mega Blaziken using Ice Punch on a Flygon, but Blaziken can't learn Ice Punch. Also in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, some Pokemon, like Wailmer and Sharpedo, have unique surfing models that if they're used to surf. If you happen to be surfing out on your Whalmer though, use your fishing rod, battle a Pokemon so that your Whalmer then evolves into Wailord. The game will freeze when the battle ends because the game is trying to change from Whalmer surfing model into the default generic model that Pokemon would have, which confuses the game. There's another glitch involving evolution in Pokemon Sun and Moon, where sometimes when a Pokemon is evolving on the screen, you can see a transparent version of the Pokemon it's trying to evolve into right next to it. Then in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the last main series games for the 3DS, if you go to Coney City, you'll notice some NPCs are actually Dittos like this chef in the restaurant. If you happen to stand slightly to the right of this Ditto, then talk to the Ditto chef, this will start a battle. Then if you defeat the Ditto in battle or catch the imposter chef Ditto, the imposter chef will disappear and then the real chef will rush in to try to go to his spot to work. However, since you're in the real chef's way, he will just keep walking into you for about 30 seconds and then stop. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee also have some NPCs who do weird things. Like if you battle your rival in the SS Anne and they use a full restore to heal one of their Pokemon, the game will say you used a full restore, even though you didn't use your full restore and your rival did instead, and should say your rival's name used a full restore. Now you may have noticed that as time went on, it seems like there were less and less mistakes in each Pokemon game, which is true to an extent, although Pokemon Sword and Shield have a few more mistakes than some of the last couple of Pokemon games did. Some of these mistakes have been patched out or were only available in the game for a short amount of time, which was the case with a Drillbur event. Back in April of 2020, some event Drillbur raids on Shield version would come with a Drillbur that knows Hydro Pump. This was later fixed in that same event since Drillbur shouldn't have Hydro Pump and was only active for a couple hours. There's another oversight in Sword and Shield with the move Trick Room, although similar oversights existed in previous games as well. Basically, if a Pokemon in your team had an effective speed set of over 1809, which can be achieved by having a naturally fast Pokemon boost its speed with an attack like Agility, it will just ignore the Trick Room and attack first anyway because of an overflow oversight with the speed value and how it's calculated under Trick Room. I could go on a bit more with Pokemon Sword and Shield like I can with Red and Blue or Emerald version, but let's just move on to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl for now. Some people out there might say that these games' existence alone are a mistake, although much like with Pokemon Sword and Shield, a lot of the mistakes were patched out like this glitch sticker you can get in the Jubilife TV station. This person would give you a random sticker for your ball capsules, and there was a small chance you could get a glitched unnamed capsule, resulting in the text just saying, "You received 1." There was also this funny glitch where you could battle the 7th gym leader whose name I'm forgetting, without actually doing the gym puzzle, due to a glitch that lets you slide up this ice ledge diagonally. It was a pretty cool trick for speedruns, and a result of the game allowing you to move diagonally, which you couldn't do in the original Diamond and Pearl games. This next one can also happen in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but if you name a Pokemon Egg with a capital E then 2 lowercase g's, and deposit in the PC, then interact with the Pokemon named Egg, the game will think it's an actual egg and ask you what you want to do with the egg, where if you nickname your Pokemon anything else or just don't nickname it at all, it will cut out the word the and just use the Pokemon's name, since asking what you want to do with the Psyduck just doesn't make a lot of sense now. Pokemon Legends Arceus, on the other hand, didn't have PCs because it takes place before they were ever invented, but it does have a glitch where sometimes in battle, it will display all of your moves as being normal type moves, even though they aren't actually normal type moves. There was also a glitch that is now patched, but I thought was pretty funny, but in version 1.0 of Legends Arceus, if a wild Cherrim changes forms, it just wouldn't be possible to catch it. And finally, we have Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. In the Glaciado Mountain, before you fight the gym leader and do the Snow Sled challenge with your ride Pokemon, their textures can sometimes glitch out, and instead of being snow covered, they'll just look like this, which has them be either washed out or just have a shade of white over them. There was also a temporary glitch back in March of this year when they introduced Walking Wake and Iron Leaves. These raids could appear if you didn't update your game, but since you were on an old version of the game, the raids would just start and spawn in a bad egg for you since you don't have the data for these new Paradox Pokemon. I heard about this glitch before and wanted to try it before I updated my game, but when I went to try it, my Switch unfortunately had auto update enabled and I couldn't try it out for myself. There's a lot of other mistakes in the core series Pokemon games that I didn't even discuss in this video, since this would be like a 9-hour video if I did. So let me know what other mistakes you know of in the comments down below. Also consider leaving a like and subscribing for more Pokemon videos, checking out my other pages linked in the description, and becoming a YouTube channel member for some extra support. Thank you all so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, and bye bye.